Japanese admirals dismissed the American carrier fleet until Midway turned it into a graveyard for their ships. The Arrogant Horizon. June 4, 1942, 4:30 a.m. The flight deck of the Japanese aircraft carrier Akagi slices through the pre-dawn Pacific swell, engines humming like a predator's low growl. Salt spray whips across the faces of pilots buckling into their cockpits, the air thick with the metallic tang of aviation fuel and the sharp bite of impending glory. You can almost hear the confident chatter among the crew, Zero fighters revving, ready to launch into the graying sky, their wings emblazoned with the rising sun. Aboard the flagship, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto stands on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the horizon where Midway Atoll lurks, a tiny speck in the endless blue. He's the architect of this grand strike, the man who orchestrated Pearl Harbor's thunderous surprise just 6 months prior. Now, with 4 elite carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, flanked by battleships and cruisers, his combined fleet steams forward like an unstoppable tidal wave. The plan is flawless. Seize Midway, lure out what's left of the battered American Pacific Fleet, and crush it once and for all. Yamamoto's officers scoff at intelligence whispers of American carriers lurking nearby. The Yankees? Their fleet is in ruins, one captain mutters, dismissing reports of the USS Yorktown, crippled in the recent Battle of the Coral Sea, somehow patched up in Pearl Harbor's dry docks. Impossible. They'd need a miracle to float that hulk again. But miracles are brewing in the shadows. Far to the northeast, American codebreakers in Hawaii have cracked the Japanese naval cipher, JN-25, piecing together Yamamoto's intentions like a deadly puzzle. Admiral Chester Nimitz, the steely commander of the Pacific Fleet, has gambled everything on this intel. He's dispatched Task Force 17 under Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher and Task Force 16 led by Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance, carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown, her decks still scarred from Coral Sea's fires. Welders worked around the clock, sealing hull breaches in a mere 72 hours instead of the expected months. She's seaworthy enough, the yard boss had wired, but beneath the fresh paint, her wounds run deep. As the first rays of sun pierce the clouds, Japanese scout planes lift off from the cruiser Tone, engines roaring into the wind. Pilots like Lieutenant Tomonaga Joichi, leading the strike from Hiryu, feel invincible. Their Zeros have swept the skies from Pearl to the Indian Ocean, outmaneuvering anything the Allies throw at them. Today, we end the American threat, Tomonaga thinks, throttling up. Below decks, mechanics arm Kate torpedo bombers and Val dive bombers with 800-kilogram payloads, each one destined for Midway's runways and fuel dumps. The air buzzes with arrogance, dismissive laughs at the thought of American resistance. After all, Japan's carriers are the pinnacle of naval aviation, their crews battle-hardened from conquests in Malaya, the Philippines, and Java. Yet, as the fleet advances, subtle cracks appear in the facade. A delayed scout plane from Tone, its catapult malfunctioning, finally launches late. A small hiccup, but one that will echo like thunder. Yamamoto paces, his mind on the bigger picture. This battle isn't just about Midway. It's about forcing a decisive engagement, dictating terms to a weakened foe. His admirals, like Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, commanding the carrier strike force, share the hubris. The enemy carriers? Scattered remnants, Nagumo declares in a briefing, waving off concerns. We'll turn their decks into pyres. The ocean stretches vast and deceptive, hiding the American ambush. Aboard Enterprise, dive bomber pilot Clarence Wade McCluskey scans his charts, his squadron of SBD Dauntlesses fueled and ready. The Americans know the Japanese are coming, thanks to Station Hypo's cryptologists like Joseph Rochefort, who posed as a disheveled genius in his red smoking jacket, unraveling codes in a basement dungeon. AF is Midway, Rochefort had confirmed, pinpointing the target. Nimitz believed him, positioning his forces northeast of the atoll, out of sight but within striking range. As dawn fully breaks, the first wave of 108 Japanese planes thunders toward Midway, leaving contrails like arrows of fate. The carriers turn into the wind, decks alive with the symphony of war. But in the distance, unseen,
American PBY Catalinas spot the fleet, radioing back. Enemy carriers sighted. The trap is set. What the Japanese dismiss as a crippled ghost fleet is about to rise from the depths. And as the first bombs fall on Midway's sands, a question hangs in the salt-laden air. How long can arrogance blind even the sharpest eyes?
The first blood. The sky above Midway Atoll erupts in chaos at 6:16 a.m. Japanese vals and kates streak downward in tight formations, engines screaming as they dive toward the atoll's airstrip and fuel tanks. Bombs tumble free, blooming into orange fireballs that swallow hangars and send black smoke twisting into the morning air. Marines on the ground scramble for cover, machine guns chattering upward in futile defiance. You can feel the ground shake, taste the acrid cordite on the wind. Back on Akagi's bridge, Vice Admiral Nagumo watches through binoculars, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The first strike has gone almost exactly as planned. Reports crackle over the radio. Runways cratered, aircraft destroyed on the ground, oil tanks ablaze. Midway neutralized, his staff officer announces. Nagumo nods. Now the real prize, the American carriers, must be drawn out. He orders his second wave prepared. More vals and kates armed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs, ready to launch the moment his scout planes locate the enemy fleet. But the scouts are late. That malfunctioning catapult on Tone has cost precious minutes. Lieutenant Tomonaga's torpedo bombers, returning from the Midway strike with battle damage and low fuel, circle impatiently, signaling urgently. Request immediate landing to rearm and refuel. Nagumo hesitates. His doctrine is clear. Keep the flight decks clear for the decisive strike against the American carriers. Yet the returning planes are burning fuel they don't have, and some are leaking oil across the deck. At 7 a.m., the decision point arrives. A message from one of Tone's delayed scout planes finally breaks through static. Enemy force sighted. Bearing 010, distance 200 miles. Composition: 1 carrier, 5 cruisers, several destroyers. Nagumo's heart quickens. 1 carrier? The intelligence had spoken of possibly 2, but this seems manageable. Still cautious, he orders the second wave, already spotted on deck with torpedoes, to be rearmed with bombs for a follow-up strike on Midway. Better to finish the atoll first, then pivot to the carriers. The rearming begins. Mechanics swarm the hangar decks, swapping torpedoes for high-explosive bombs, the clank of tools and shouted orders filling the steel cavern. Gasoline lines hiss as tanks are topped off. The carriers are vulnerable now, flight decks cluttered, hangars packed with fueled and armed aircraft, ordnance stacked in the open. Unseen, 150 miles northeast, the American task forces have been holding their breath. On Enterprise, Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey leads his dauntless dive bombers off the deck at 7:05 a.m., climbing into a sky streaked with high cirrus. He has no exact position for the Japanese carriers, only a last known point from a PBY Catalina's dawn sighting. Find them or go home on fumes, he tells his wingmen over the radio. The Hornets Air Group, led by Commander Stanhope Ring, launches minutes later but veers too far north, missing the enemy entirely. Then, at 7:40 a.m., fortune tilts. McCluskey spots a lone Japanese destroyer, Arashi, racing northeast at high speed, leaving a long white wake. She's clearly hurrying back to the main body after depth charging a suspected American submarine. McCluskey makes the call every pilot dreams of and dreads. He turns to follow the wake like a blood trail. This has to lead somewhere, he mutters into his oxygen mask. Below, Nagumo receives another scout report at 7:45 a.m. Enemy composed of several carriers. The words hit like a shell. Several, not one. Nagumo's calm fractures. He immediately countermands the rearming order. Change back to torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs. Mechanics freeze, then scramble again, hauling torpedoes back toward the hangar elevators while bombs are rolled aside. The confusion is palpable. Planes shuttled up and down,
fuel lines reconnected, crews sweating under the tropical sun. At that exact moment, high above, McCluskey's Dauntlesses break through a cloud layer at 14,000 feet. And there they are. 4 long gray shapes steaming in a loose diamond formation, white bow waves cutting the blue. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. The heart of the Imperial Japanese Navy laid bare. McCluskey pushes over into a shallow glide, signaling the attack. Behind him, Lieutenant Richard Best peels off toward Akagi with his small section of 3 planes. Best has one 1,000-pound bomb and a single-minded purpose. "This is it," he breathes. On the Japanese carriers, lookouts suddenly shout, "Enemy dive bombers!" Zero fighters scramble to intercept, but many are still low, circling to land or just taking off. The combat air patrol is thin, caught out of position. The first SBDs tip into near-vertical dives. Sirens wail. Tracers stitch the sky. And in the next 60 seconds, everything changes.
The 60 seconds that changed the Pacific. The first Dauntlesses scream downward at nearly 300 knots. Lieutenant Richard Best releases his bomb at 2,500 feet, watching the 1,000-pounder arc toward Akagi's red circle amidships. It strikes just behind the island's superstructure, punching through the flight deck and detonating deep in the hangar. A millisecond later, the second bomb from his wingman hits forward of the bridge. The third misses, but 2 are enough. Flames erupt instantly. Akagi's hangar is a tinderbox. Dozens of valves and cates still rearming, torpedoes and bombs stacked haphazardly along the deck edges, aviation gasoline vapors thick in the enclosed space. The explosions chain react. Secondary detonations rip through the carrier like firecrackers in a barrel. Steel plates buckle outward. Black smoke boils skyward in a mushroom pillar that can be seen for miles. Kaga takes the next hammer blow. McCluskey's main group dives in a coordinated avalanche. Bombs crater her flight deck in 3 places. One penetrates the forward elevator, igniting a stack of torpedoes below. The blast tears the ship in half from the inside out. Hangar walls collapse inward, crushing aircraft and men. Fire races along fuel lines, turning the once proud carrier into an inferno floating on the water. Crewmen leap over the side, their white uniforms already burning. Soryu fares no better. Yorktown's air group, launched later but arriving almost simultaneously, plunges through the thin screen of zeros. Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie's Dauntlesses score 4 direct hits in the opening seconds. Bombs detonate among parked planes, setting off a chain of explosions that gut the ship from stem to stern. Within minutes, Soryu is a drifting pyre, her magazines cooking off in rhythmic thunderclaps that shake the sea itself. On Akagi's bridge, Nagumo is thrown against a bulkhead as the ship shudders. The deck tilts. Smoke pours through ventilation shafts, choking the air. His staff officers shout conflicting reports. "Kaga ablaze! Soryu listing heavily. Hiryu still intact." Nagumo's face is ashen. In less than 6 minutes, 3 of his 4 fleet carriers have been transformed from instruments of victory into floating funeral pyres. The 4th, Hiryu, steams away at flank speed, her own air group scrambling to launch a counterstrike. You can almost smell the burning oil and hear the screams carried on the wind. The Japanese Combat Air Patrol, those few Zeros that managed to get airborne, clawed desperately at the withdrawing Dauntlesses, but the damage is done. American losses in this first devastating wave are astonishingly light. Only a handful of planes shot down. The rest climb away, fuel tanks nearly dry, radioing the code phrase that electrifies every American ship within range. Task Force attacked. Back on Enterprise, Admiral Spruance listens to the reports in grim silence. He knows the battle is far from over. Hiryu remains, and her commander, Rear Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, is one of Japan's most aggressive and capable officers. Already, Hiryu's dive bombers and torpedo planes are lifting off, hell-bent on revenge. Their target, the battered but still floating USS Yorktown. At 10:25 a.m., the Japanese retaliatory strike finds her. VAL dive bombers, led by Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi, scream down through a wall of anti-aircraft fire.
3 bombs slam into Yorktown's flight deck, disabling her boilers and leaving her dead in the water. Smoke pours from her stacks. She lists, fires raging below. Yet her damage control parties, trained relentlessly since Pearl Harbor, fight back with hoses and CO2, refusing to let her die. Meanwhile, the American torpedo bombers, devastators from Hornet, Enterprise, and Yorktown, finally arrive over the Japanese fleet. They fly low and slow, easy prey for the Zeros. Almost everyone is shot down before reaching drop range. Their sacrifice, however, pulls the Japanese fighters down to the deck, leaving the sky above open for a second wave of Dauntlesses that had been held in reserve. At 5:30 p.m., Enterprise's remaining dive bombers, led by Lieutenant Earl Gallagher, find Hiryu. 4 bombs smash into her flight deck in quick succession. Fire races forward, engulfing aircraft and fuel. By evening, Hiryu is burning uncontrollably, her crew abandoning ship as Yamaguchi chooses to go down with her, rather than survive defeat. 4 carriers lost in a single day. The heart of the Imperial Japanese Navy ripped out. Yamamoto, hundreds of miles to the west on Yamato, receives the crushing news in silence. His grand gamble has failed. The decisive battle he sought has come, and the enemy dusk, the tide has turned forever.
The bitter reckoning. Evening falls over the burning sea. The horizon glows orange where 4 Japanese carriers smolder like fallen suns. Akagi lists heavily to starboard, her once proud flight deck now a twisted ruin of blackened steel and flickering flames. Kaga has already disappeared beneath the waves in a final, thunderous explosion that sends a geyser of water and debris hundreds of feet into the air. Soryu follows soon after, breaking in two with a groan of tortured metal that carries across the water like a dying scream. Only Hiryu remains afloat, but not for long. Her fires rage unchecked, fed by ruptured fuel lines and the ammunition still cooking off in her hangars. Aboard the distant Yamato, Admiral Yamamoto sits motionless in his cabin. The radio messages arrive in staccato bursts, each one more devastating than the last. Akagi ablaze and sinking. Kaga lost. Soryu abandoned. Hiryu under heavy attack. His chief of staff, Rear Admiral Matome Ugaki, stands nearby, face drained of color. No one speaks. The weight of the disaster settles over the bridge like smoke. Yamamoto had staked the Empire's future on this single, decisive stroke. Instead, he has lost the core of his naval air power in a single afternoon. Over 250 first-line aircraft destroyed, hundreds of irreplaceable pilots and aircrew killed or wounded, 4 fleet carriers reduced to drifting hulks or graves at the bottom of the Pacific. You can picture him there, the architect of Pearl Harbor, the man who once warned his government that Japan could run wild for 6 months or a year before American industrial might caught up. Now that clock has run out in hours instead of years. He rises slowly, walks to the chart table, and stares at the plot of Midway Atoll. The tiny speck that was supposed to be the anvil on which the American fleet would be smashed has instead become the forge that melted his own sword. Closer to the carnage, surviving Japanese destroyers circle the wrecks like mourners at a funeral pyre. Crewmen in life jackets bob in oil-slicked water, waving weakly at rescue boats. Many will not be saved before nightfall. The sea claims its own. On Hiryu, Rear Admiral Yamaguchi refuses a lifeboat. He gathers his remaining staff on the sloping flight deck, opens a bottle of sake, and toasts the Emperor. "We have failed," he says quietly, "but we die honorably." As the sun dips below the horizon, Hiryu rolls over and sinks, taking Yamaguchi and his final defiant thoughts with her. On the American side, exhaustion wars with elation. Aboard Enterprise, pilots stumble from their cockpits, faces streaked with oil and sweat, hands trembling as they light cigarettes with shaking fingers. Wade McCluskey collapses onto a ready room bench, his dauntless riddled with holes but still flying. "We got them," he whispers to no one in particular. The radio room buzzes with jubilant voices relaying the tally. 4 carriers confirmed sunk or sinking. Spruance and Fletcher confer by signal lamp across the darkening water.
They know the victory is staggering, but caution prevails. Yamamoto's battleships, still the most powerful surface force on Earth, lurk to the west. A night surface action could yet turn triumph into disaster. Yet Yamamoto has already turned away. At 2:55 on June 5th, he orders the combined fleet to retire westward. No counterattack, no revenge sweep. The gamble has failed, and pressing on now would only invite further slaughter from American submarines and land-based bombers. The retreat begins under cover of darkness, a long line of gray silhouettes slipping away from the scene of their greatest defeat. In the days that follow, the strategic map of the Pacific is redrawn in invisible ink. Japan's ability to project carrier air power across vast distances is shattered. The offensive momentum that carried them from Pearl Harbor to the gates of Australia evaporates. Guadalcanal, the Solomons, Tarawa, Saipan, the chain of bloody island battles that will grind Japan down over the next 3 years, becomes inevitable. America's industrial resurrection, the very thing Yamamoto feared most, is now unchallenged. New carriers slide down the ways in weeks instead of years. New pilots pour from training fields. The tide, so long in Japan's favor, has reversed with brutal finality. Midway was not the end of the war, but it was the moment the war changed from a contest of equals into a slow, inexorable American advance. From the arrogance of dawn on June 4th to the bitter taste of defeat by dusk, the Pacific theater found its turning point in 60 searing seconds above 4 burning carriers. The graveyard Yamamoto helped create now holds the dreams of an empire.